Hello, everyone. Happy, I was going to say Thursday, but just hope you're having a great week in general. Thanks for checking into the Pit Stop. This is Amazing Race Season 36, Episode 6, Our Lion Strikes Again recap. I'm James, and this is the lovely...
And I'm Cayla.
Hey, Cayla, or I should say, Kiorana from the Cook Islands. I hope the Wi-Fi lasts while we record for the next 40 minutes.
We'll hope for the best. We'll hope for the best as you look tan and beautiful and glowing, and I'm so jealous as I'm sitting here pale in my room.
I miss traveling with you. We're due for a trip. So
we are due for a trip. It's coming.
Well, I feel like this episode, there is so much to unpack, and we were we were kind of texting each other here and there while we were watching, but I'm excited to do more of a deep dive because there's just a lot of material here to discuss, especially as former racers and fans of the show and now being viewers of the show. So yeah. I love that we can bring so many different perspectives to discuss Episode 6. So let's just dive right into it. Teams travel to Cordoba, Argentina, which is the second largest city there. It's a mega leg, so as we can expect, there's going to be double the detours, double the roadblocks, double the stress, double the tension. And Group 1 at 8:15 a.m., Ricky and Cesar, Juan and Shane. Group 2 leaving at 8:30 a.m., Amber and Vinny, Danny and Angie, Rod and Leticia. Group 3 at 8:45 a.m., Yvonne and Melissa, Derek and Shalisa, and Sunny and Busy. And right off the bat, I feel like it's setting the tone for this leg of the race. We hear Danny saying, "Hey guys, let's go." And then Amber responds, "Let's just all follow Danny." And I feel like this is the theme that's in the title. Our Lion Strikes Again. They get their route info to drive to Plaza del Bicentenario to find their next clue, which happens to be the detour. Bicicleta or Boladero? Boladora? Boladora?
Dude, I don't know, but I wouldn't do that one. I'll just tell you that right off the bat. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Put me on a bike.
Yeah, put us on a bike. We would have crushed that detour. And Bicicleta, teams had to use a modern stationary bike connected to a small grinder where they had to use their pedal power to grind up plastic bottles. And then once teams have recycled enough plastic bottles to fill up at least one container, they would then get their next clue from the inventors. And then in Boladora, teams will have to get at least one of those things looped around. They would get 10 attempts to do so, but each team member had to do this successfully in order to receive their next clue. Let's just dive right into the Bicicleta one, because Cayla, I'm on the same page as you. Why would we do this one?
I mean, it's literally like to our core. I feel like what identifies us at this point now. All we need is Shannon and Cash, cheering us on the sidelines. Put us in, coach. Put us in.
Literally. I was watching this. I was like, this is in our nature. I feel like it's very on brand for us. 100%. This was also the better side of the detour to choose.
100%. And I'm curious how far and how close this stuff was, because we obviously saw some teams show up to one and decide to, switch detours, which I feel like there's been a lot of switching detours this season. I just want to acknowledge that. At least when I went on, that was not a common thing. That wasn't a thing in my mind. It was that was going to be absolute last resort kind of situation. I'm just so shocked how many teams have switched detours this season. Are you?
I am definitely surprised by it, because I feel like that is a golden rule just from watching so many seasons ever since the beginning. I feel like it's been sometimes a death sentence for teams who switch up a detour. So
yeah, and these did not look close. One looked out in the country, right? And then the other one is in a metro city. And so it's just, unless I can physically see the other detour, I'm not switching. I'm not going to run navigating. But again, if you're all navigating together, or you have Danny, the navigating whiz, he's a human life GPS.
Truly.
I'm gonna call him Garmin for like the next the rest of the. He's just like a real life Garmin. Do you remember those like back before like
Yes,
everyone just had
that
their
is
phones?
so fitting. Okay, we're gonna call Danny Garmin for this episode.
Garmin.
I love him.
But yeah, I would have even like before our whole challenge bike debut. I would have picked the biking. I think.
Absolutely.
Just anytime like you both have to do it and like in the same turn, like there's just too many variables in my mind, and it's like the fact that we could switch off and do the bike, like I would just do that. And I love how they incorporate, just like sustainability and stuff, like sustainable
Yes.
tourism. That's like a whole thing. So but I did notice that it was like really difficult. Like it wasn't just like riding the bike. Like the plastic would get stuck.
It definitely involved a lot of teamwork because while one person was riding it, the other one had to be inserting the plastic. And there was definitely a method to this madness, which we kind of saw with Amber and Vinny. If
Yeah.
you lose momentum at any point, that grinder is going to get kind of
Yeah.
backed up. And so
Yeah.
we saw them having to like reverse pedal and then forward pedal and do that enough times for the bottle to finally get through. The moment you lost that momentum, that's when it gets backed up. But we saw Rod completely beast his way through this. Danny and Angie were adorable. I was actually surprised Danny and Angie finished before Vinny and Amber, just because I feel like Vinny was going so fast. But that phrase, sometimes slow and steady wins the race. And I think that's really served Danny and Angie well on this detour.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not shocked, he beasted through that whole thing, but I will just say right off the bat, I'm already liking like the detours better, like this mega
Yes,
leg. You know what I mean? Like it was like off the bat a little bit more entertaining, just from like a physical standpoint and just kind of what they had them doing.
I would agree. It just, and I will argue this, and I was like, should I text Matt or Pat and just like give feedback? But I feel like with 90-minute episodes, mega legs should absolutely just be the norm moving forward. I feel like
Yeah,
double the roadblocks, double the detours, it just fills the episode so much better, at least halfway through the season. I get very early on with like 12, 13 teams, there's enough teams to kind of carry the episode to really make it
100%.
feel high stake, very high energy. But when it starts to dwindle down in numbers, I think to supplement that space, it should be more tasks because it feels just a little bit more like high intensity for
I
me.
agree. I agree. And like the navigating between each one, like that's where you can get like the differential like placements start to happen. I mean, if everyone keeps running in packs, then we're probably not going to see that, which we can get into later. But but yeah. That's where I'm
Well,
at
the
that.
middle departure group, they showed up to Boladora, and that's when they saw Ricky and Cesar and Juan and Shane struggling. So I think seeing those two teams, I think that they did make the right call in switching up the detour, which again, we saw just with how things kind of progressed. If you did the bicicleta side of the detour, you showed up at the next roadblock pretty quickly after like Ricky and Cesar and Juan and Shane. At least that's just how it made it seem for me as a viewer. Because I don't feel like there's been a lot of tasks that we've seen where like Ricky and Cesar are there with a bunch of teams. It's usually them and then they're already gone, or them and like maybe one other team shows up. So I do think Bicicleta was the better option. I do also think the judging of the other side of this detour was a little loose for me and my liking. There were times where like the thing would like bounce off the hay and then wrap around the moving target and then it counted. And I was just like, huh? Yeah. Like if you're playing cornhole and the beanbag bounces on the grass and then up onto the board, it doesn't count.
That doesn't count. At least that's how I play. My competitive ass over here, I'm like, that doesn't count. So, and I'll agree with you. I do think them switching was the better call, especially if like you're having to wait in between each people taking their 10 throw, like their turn. Like that's a lot of time you're waiting on another team. So I agree with that. even though there's no way they could just see the other detour. Like I said, one was like in like a rural space, the other one looks like it was like Metro City. But my question, which like I'll bring it up a lot throughout this podcast specifically, is just I just want to play like the what if game, right? Like on their own, would all three of those teams switch the detour? You know what I mean? Like who would have stayed and who would have, it's like I'm just curious for the decision of them all sticking together heavily relied on Danny's navigation. I genuinely, this is just, again, I don't know, I haven't talked to them, I'm like strictly just speaking as like a viewer. I don't feel like Rod and Letitia were confident navigating, so they were like, let's stick with them like the whole way through. And same with Amber and Vinny. I think Amber and Vinny were a little bit more. I think they just have a very good relationship with Danny and Angie, as we've like seen in like the past couple episodes. So I think that played an influence too. But like for me, I'm just wondering like at what point was it decided like, listen, we are not going to separate from Danny and Angie because we want to use his navigation? Because that to me was the big thing that I felt like drove their decision and like, okay, we'll switch with everybody. Because like, I don't know, I just, for all three of them to switch, like that's a big decision.
It was herd mentality for sure. Yeah. And I think there was a little bit of relying on Danny and his navigation skills on behalf of the other two teams. So,
which in turn, as we segue, this is like the perfect segue into like the next thing. It's like that obviously paid off for Danny and Angie, given
absolutely
how the next one happened.
Yes, given the nature of this next roadblock, absolutely. Who has a good sense of direction? Some of these teams definitely don't in this roadblock or outside of this roadblock. So we knew this was going to be a struggle for some, but participating team member for this roadblock had to team up with a professional driver, memorize the complex sequence of turns on a 1.5 mile course, and then if they were able to recreate it, a rally professional would then hand them their next clue. And then we hear Phil say, this is not a good time to get car sick. There's a lot of turns, the car's driving fast, no air conditioning, you're strapped in with this uniform. I can only imagine it feeling like almost like a sweat box.
So hot. It reminded me of the challenge that me and Dom did, literally on the challenge. Like we were in those gold cars, and it is ungodly hot. It is very hot. So, you know,
with Angie, she struggled with that heat. And even in Puerto Vallarta, on the very first leg of the race, she struggled with the heat. Yeah. How do you think you would have done with this roadblock?
I think I would have, like, you know, if we, coming down to who would have done it, Raquel or I definitely think me, because one, I'm probably the better one when it comes to puzzles and like strategy related stuff. So I think on the clue, I would be able to pick up on that. I think I would have done very well. Like, I think the first time in the car, just like I think everyone was, I could see them, you know, closing their eyes and almost like drawing out with their hands, like trying to memorize like the track. After I got back, like, and I saw the tile pieces, honestly, I would not even worry about the track itself. I would strictly just focus on the puzzle pieces, because given the puzzle pieces that they give you, the track, in my personal opinion, was there to hopefully make you heated, to hopefully make you dizzy, to like kind of disorient, throw you off, to where the 3 minutes is not a ton of time, but only a 6-piece puzzle. I feel fairly confident that I could have done it quick, which is like, I thought it was hysterical, Juan and Shane, how he goes, dude, like, I think he got it. And he goes, no, he's not that smart. And then he goes, well, that's not going to look good on TV.
First attempt, on his first, he like beasted.
James, I honestly think you would have gotten it on your first attempt too. Like, I would like to think that I would have as well. Like, if I quickly flipped them over quick, to me, again, this is the whole, like, you know, talking from my couch over here, but like, I genuinely don't think the puzzle itself looked that hard, but I get that it could be hard if, like, in your mind, you were just in that car being whipped around, it's hot, and you're like trying to think, okay, I turned here first. You need to just get that out of your brain. Just focus on the puzzle pieces. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you just drove. Just focus on the puzzle pieces.
The roadblock was 100% the puzzle. Like, the
The
puzzle's
puzzle.
the only thing that mattered, in my
Yeah.
opinion. And I think you're right. The track and the racing was only there to disorient teams. So yeah, I would like to think that I would have gotten it on my first attempt well, because I would have seen it and like, oh, this is just the puzzle. Like, what fits together, what doesn't fit together. But the timer is what threw me for a loop. And I'm only having 3 minutes to put that together. I think at least I would have flipped them all over, at least known where to put the starting line and the finish line piece, and then try to build from there. But at least get the groundwork and said, if I have to do a second attempt, now I know what the pieces look like. So then it would be easier on my second attempt to start to feel the movements of the track,
Right.
knowing what the images looked like. Because I have a very photographic memory, as do you, since we did crush that cycling challenge on the Challenge USA. But I kind of enjoyed this roadblock.
I loved this roadblock. I loved this one. This has been my favorite one this season.
But this is where the theme of the title, Our Alliance Strikes Again, continues to weave its way out into this episode, with Amber completing the roadblock. She clearly wants to help Angie because Angie's struggling. Feels bad for Angie because we see Angie wanting to be like, let's take a penalty. And I thought Danny handled that really well. He approached her. He was calm. He said, Mom, you got this. And then Angie remembering her why she's doing the race. I loved this like moment of self-empowerment with Angie. But Amber could see clearly Angie was struggling. And we know Angie and Danny and Amber and Vinny have a very close working relationship on this race. Yeah. So she's like, I'm going to stop. I'm going to help. And even Angie's like, don't run your race. Like, we'll be fine. We got this. And I love that Angie was doing that and being like, hey, don't worry about me. But Amber was very adamant. No, I'm going to help you. I'm going to stay here with you, which I get. I mean, I think this shows the depth of relationships that are forged on the race. And I think it's important for viewers to understand that you don't just have the time running the course with these teams. There are times off camera sometimes where these relationships continue to develop. So I'm not surprised that Amber wanted to help. But then Amber wanted to stick around for Rod and Leticia as well. Yeah. Who are a dominant team in terms of
dominant physical team.
So now she's helping both teams. And I couldn't help but sit here. It was very humbling for me, I'm not going to lie, because I do feel like I have been very defensive of my season of the race with the fans. There are some things I do still stand by. But as a viewer now, seeing it happen on another season, as a viewer, it takes away from the excitement of what could have been with like, and I love Angie, but she absolutely probably would have struggled just a little bit more. Then it's that question of what if, what would have happened?
Yeah.
And then same with Rod and Leticia. We don't know now how Leticia would have struggled.
Would have done.
Didn't help. So I'm going to say the fans, I stand corrected. You're right. As a viewer, it's not fun to watch. It takes away what could have been. And also, I think, prevents other teams from passing or excelling. Now, on the racers' defense, racers don't run the race for the viewers. I'm going to stand by that.
100%.
You're not running the race being like, I don't want the viewers to like me. I don't want them to hate me.
You're not thinking of that at all.
No. So I can't fault them, because Danny did say at the beginning of the episode, it's a mega leg. Today is strictly about survival. And he capitalized on it. He executed it. And I get the strategy, and I can't fault him for it. He was absolutely in survival mode.
No, it was impeccable for them to have those strategic relationships. And as much as like, this is not a word that is accepted in like the Amazing Race group, but like alliance, like I feel like this was the first time that they used that word, and they used it multiple times, which is like, you know, that's cohesive in Big Brother, that's cohesive in Survivor, you know, those kinds of things are accepted. In Amazing Race amongst our fans, it's typically not. You know, but like it's I can 100% see both sides, because maybe we didn't say it, maybe it wasn't as out there, but like in support of like, these alliances, like me, Raquel, Kim, Penn, especially, we had moments where we helped each other, like, so you could look at that as an alliance, whether you want to accept that or not. But yeah, I guess it's like just backtracking as a viewer. It's hard, right? Because like I loved this cast, and I felt like the yellow team, it's just with moving in like a herd mentality like that. One, it feels almost like exclusive, which like you'll see kind of, later in the episode. But it's like it was almost like there was no point in paying attention to the yellow team this leg. You know what I mean? Just because like there's, in my mind, if that's how they're going to move, you're securing that whole group of teams making it to the mat, which is in turn keeping them in the back, which from a racer survival standpoint, that is very smart. You don't have to like it, but it is smart.
It is smart.
Like,
yeah. And I felt bad for Derek and Shalisa, because like once the 50-minute mark showed on the episode and they were just finishing the first half of the mega leg, I was like, oh, like their fate has been sealed. They're done. But then putting that viewer cap on, you not knowing just how much really goes on in a duration of a leg, and maybe we didn't see a lot of struggle with Derek and Shalisa. They could have easily gotten lost. We don't know how far behind they were.
Yeah.
We don't know. But from just the edit, you're thinking, well, of course, Derek and Shalisa can't catch up now, because these teams are absolutely running together. And that's one thing I think I struggled with when reliving our season, is like, I feel like fans made it out to be like, that's what we did the whole race. When, I'm sorry, Will and I never once raced alongside multiple teams throughout a leg of the race. Never. Yeah. We still were able to run our race. And I think Vinny says it perfectly, ties it up in a bow, and I hope viewers can understand it. There's a time to run your own race, absolutely, but there are also times to not. And it's having the balance of knowing when and when not to. And I feel like I sound like a broken record, but that's the reality of the race. It's a show 100%. About relationships. That's the core of this show. So,
but I think a lot of people would actually argue that. Yeah, like, I think a lot of people would actually argue that. Because I think in earlier seasons, like the earlier nature of the race, it was run your race. Yes. I think it has evolved over time, but it's just like, the human connection, especially after going through something like COVID, and this season being one of those seasons that were affected by COVID. It's not your typical, amazing race season. It's just it's very hard. I'm only speaking from like personal experience, to separate the human relationships you've built with these people and see someone like Angie who's struggling, who's telling her son, and like, which I know could not have been easy. Like, we might have to take the penalty. I don't know that I can do that. And it's like, now that you have a relationship with someone like that, for Amber, she got emotional. She was literally crying. She's like, I'm not leaving them. I'm not, especially when like, good on her if Danny is the one that got them there. You know what I mean? From a direction standpoint. So it's like, again, we don't have to like it, but I 100% see how that alliance is kind of growing and evolving. And I think I would have done the same as Amber. I do. I don't know if I would have helped Rod and Letitia though, just because she seemed perfectly capable. And it's kind of like, it's one of those, look, yeah, we did get you here. Maybe I would go over and say, hey, these are the middle pieces. And then I'd get out of there. It's like, you can kind of help them, which is like what Amber tried to do initially with just telling her, hey, these are what goes here. And, she's like, nope, go run your race. Don't worry about me. And I think Amber recognized like, oh no, I think I really need to like walk her through this. Yeah. But yeah, to do that for two teams, especially a team that will outbeat you on a foot race, which they did, they got third. It's like, at some point, you're going to be broken up now. And I bet you it'll be next leg with the 15-minute release times. I bet you they don't keep those 3 teams together. So it's kind of like, so now Rod and Letitia get the 15-minute heads up when, in my opinion, Danny and Angie carried them because the race is heavily navigation. You can come in and crush the detours, crush the roadblocks, 100%. That's obviously a big part of it as well. But where you make or break it is navigation and directions and getting from A to B. And without Danny, I don't think those 2 teams would have been as secured in the position that they finished in, if that makes sense. And that's nothing against them because they've obviously finished in the front of the pack before, but it's like, right, it's a mega leg. There's so many things that can happen, and now we'll just never know. Like we'll never know because they were so tight. But I'll get off my soapbox about that because, again, I don't hate it. I understand it. I just do think it needs to be talked about just because the fans are pretty passionate one way or the other. But
no, I appreciate this conversation too, because you weren't on my season and you have also done the race. So you get it. You can understand and see why, as a racer, a team would do that or run that type of race. But then also on the flip side, you don't have to like it. And that's what it boils down to. And still to this day, everyone's like, oh, rules have changed because Will and James broke the race. No, there aren't rules in the race that say you can't work with other teams. I will say this proves that the rules have not changed since my season of the race.
Right.
And if there's any rule that I think should change, and to me that I think is a valid rule to be implemented, is that once a team gets their clue, your race keeps on going. You shouldn't be able to stop and help another team. If you want to delay retrieving your help a team, yes. But the moment you get your clue, it should
you should have to move out of the detour or the roadblock. I do like that. And who knows, like maybe they will implement something like that. Like I know one rule that's already in place that had nothing to do with your season. It's like if you ask someone for directions, you have to ask them for directions. You're not allowed to outright follow them. And like we had that happen. They're like, oh, well, hey, like just follow us. You're not allowed to do that. So the fact that you're just following another team, I'm curious if they'll kind of maybe do something away with that. But again, I think the way that they can avoid that is by not doing these 15-minute release times. If you're released in the placement that you have, maybe 5-10 minutes, like each individual team, or like in the past where it's like if you finished an hour behind, then you're released an hour behind. That's a lot of time to make up. But, it's just kind of like, I'm just curious to see like what direction it goes, depending on the feedback of like how everyone perceives this episode specifically. Because yes, did you and Jane or you and Will kind of ignited something and people feel a certain type of way? Yes, but like I can attest this was a little different. Like, yeah, you guys didn't stay behind and finish a task for someone. Like, this was a little different.
And if a team's going to give you an answer, you're not going to say no. You're going to take whatever help. It's so stupid. Like, don't help me. And then like, I'm not saying what Angie said was stupid. I'm just saying like, if someone's going to offer me help, I'm going to take it. Angie, I get, because she's so sweet. And she's like, I don't want to hold you up. I get that.
Which also, I respect the hell out of her for that. Absolutely. But like, also, I respect the hell out of Amber for staying behind and helping her. I do. Like, again, I don't have to like it as like a race dramatic standpoint, but like, I freaking love that. I that. I understand that. I would have done the same thing. I would have. Moving on.
This is very therapeutic. All right, moving on. The roadblock.
Therapy.
Yes. Who wants to score? Join a bubble soccer team and score 1 goal against their opponents. It was bubble soccer. It was the second roadblock of this mega leg. And I can only anticipate, just from my experience of doing a mega leg on our season, we had a stop down in between the first half and the second half, where it was kind of like a production hold for like the crew to have a rest period. So I'm assuming there was a little bit of a rest period here before continuing. But with this roadblock, it was fun. I felt like it was pretty straightforward. I also loved the fact that Phil said was like bubble soccer might look like a joke, and it definitely started that way, but then it became so popular because now there's leagues all over the world. And it's true. Like I had a friend who started a bubble soccer business. I've never
What?
done it myself. I know I'm dying to play. It looks so fun. It just looked goofy.
I need to do it. 1, 2. I freaking loved this. Like I obviously like recognized like if you got past a certain group of people, they it wasn't like super aggressive at the goal line. But everyone getting like knocked and banged around, I was like actually laughing out loud. I thought it was hysterical. But like I'm so glad that Rod like kind of was like, "Oh, well once I realize I can bulldoze and knock all these people over, like that's the strategy." Or no, it wasn't Rod who said that. It was Cesar. He was like, "Oh, well, once I knock people over, they're knocked down. Then I have like the clear, like, open shot." I was
Brilliant.
like, so freaking funny. But then you have people like Angie and Amber who aren't going to like get in there and like, they're just getting like pummeled. Those poor girls. Poor Angie, this leg. I mean, good on her. This was her leg to get some roadblocks under her belt, and she did that.
And I think it was smart. And Danny even said, if we can get mom to do some more roadblocks, like I really think we can win the race. And I would, yeah, this was Angie's leg, and to do a mega leg, no less. I think it just shows how strong-willed she really is.
Yes.
And nothing's going to stop her from helping her son achieve and live out his dream. And I'm a sucker for moms. So
yeah, I'm a sucker for them as a team, just in general. But like, I am excited. I want to see them separate themselves because, like he said, if she could get these 2 roadblocks under her belt, they could win the race. Yes, you can if you separate yourself and stop helping the other teams navigate.
I love you, Danny, but please, it's knowing when to stop. It's knowing when to cut those losses.
Yeah, but who would have done this one of you and Will, you think?
I think I would have, just based on like the clue being like who wants to score, and obviously being at a stadium, we probably would have assumed it was something physical, but more so Will hates running. And so I would assume that this would involve running. So I think that I would have ended up doing it. And I think the whole time I would have just been laughing. Like, I don't think I would have been able to take it seriously.
Oh, I would have been dying laughing. This one would have been hard because like I appreciated Juan and Shane's conversation, because he was like, I played soccer my whole life, and I could tell he wanted to do it, which that's my story too. Like, I played soccer like all the way through club and college, and I would have seen the stadium and been like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. But like, our strategy, Raquel and I, was she was going to do the physical stuff to save the hopeful, like, attention to detail puzzle like things for me. So that would have been a hard one to kind of give up just from like an experience like standpoint. So it kind of would have been a toss up. I guess it would kind of depend on like where we were at with like our roadblock count.
Yeah, that's a good point too. The roadblock.
Yeah, it's like I would have wanted to do it, but I think if we were in like a strategic mindset, probably Raquel would have done it. And Raquel would have absolutely bulldozed through everybody, and it would have been hysterical to watch. It would have been so funny.
We saw that conversation between Juan and Shane. Like, Juan was so ready to do this roadblock. I think he was just like itching. He's like, it's soccer. Like, I love this. But Shane beasted it. Like, this was Juan and Shane's leg. Like, they
flawless leg.
Everybody. Yeah, it was very flawless to witness. But this was just a fun, I think, detour and really just hilarious.
It was a comedic break, in my opinion. It was a fun comedic break. Yeah, I loved it. I loved it.
Well,
I partially almost wish that like when teams were there together, because they were on 2 halves, I was like, oh my God, are they going to go against each other? That would have been freaking hysterical.
It would have been a good, I don't like this twist on the race, but I think it could have worked here, being a head-to-head.
Oh, that would have been good. That would have been cool.
I think this would have made sense to do it a head-to-head, and it would have been interesting, especially with
the teams that showed up working together all at the same time. Yeah.
It would have been really interesting. I just hate the head-to-head thing, but it would have made sense.
Well, anyways, I appreciated the comedic relief. I laughed a lot.
I am just bummed with how this last detour played out for
Yeah.
multiple reasons. I'll start with the first one. It's two choices: who did it or what's your beef. Nobody did who did it.
I'm so depressed. And like part of me wonders, did the yellow team, because they didn't even show the yellow team doing the
They didn't even
last
show the
one at
men.
all. They
No.
literally were like, yeah, like everyone
It would
knows.
have been a
I was
really cool
so
detour to
shocked by
watch.
that.
Yeah, I think it was something different. I liked the fact behind how in 1892, a
I would
detective
have
in
picked that.
Argentina, like I loved the backstory to it. I just thought it was really well thought out, and I felt so bad for the challenge producer who designed it because it would have been just a really great detour to have seen on the show.
I would have done that one. I honestly think that Raquel and I would have picked that one. What do you think you would have?
I think Will and I would have, just for the sheer sake of it just sounding more fun. And also reading in the clue that there's only 3 stations at the other detour. I would probably
Right.
just be like, why take that gamble and go to a detour where I don't have to wait, which we
Right.
did see being an issue in this detour. I wouldn't want to wait on anybody. So I
Which
do think Will and I would have ended up doing who did it.
Well, and again, I guess it's like in the thing, if it said you had to memorize certain things or whatever, again, if they're looking at it from, oh, 6 heads are better than one, like, let's just do that one, then
Right.
that makes sense that they chose that, because like when me and Raquel and Kim and Penn, we showed up to one of ours at the same time. It was, you could count the fish or you could do the kayak thing or whatever. And we were like, oh, well, there's 4 heads right here. Let's just all do it. So again, another example, you don't have to like it, but it happens, right?
Yep.
But no, yeah, I honestly, just from like a true crime standpoint, I freaking love true crime. I'd be like, oh my God, this is like my CSI moment. I would have done that.
I know, I always wanted to be a forensic scientist when I was growing up, so I think it would have just been fun to live out that dream.
Right? I'm like, it's giving real life Clue. Like, I'm all about games. Like, I don't want to look at freaking smelly raw meat. Like, no, I'm good.
No. Who did it would have been fun. Teams had to find
so fun.
It just would have been really cool to see teams and how they would have gone about this. I think there's just some fun moments. You could have over dramatized this task.
Yeah.
But we'll never know.
We'll never know. That's 2 now. That's 2 times that a whole option was not done.
Just wasted. Well,
the Willies and the whodunit.
Right.
There's 2 now. No one did the Willies, and now no one did whodunit.
Moment of silence for the fallen detours. But for what's your beef? I have some beef. With this part of the detour, they had to learn 14 cuts of meat and then figure out where they went in this meat puzzle before getting their next clue. Obviously, there's only 3 tables available.
Mm-hmm.
The Alliance strikes again. First off, I want to give Danny his flowers because I do think it was brilliant that he was able to outsmart the fact if we just take over these tables
and take our time, then they don't have a chance to come in and do it. Yeah.
Andy, Bon, and Melissa, who were there before them, I thought, Danny, that's brilliant strategy. But I was like, this is awful for these girls, especially because they showed up there first. And now they're at a complete disadvantage because these 3 teams are literally running the whole leg of the race together.
Yeah. It's just like, and it just felt ick when they obviously all got through. They all got their next clue. And then the girls are saying okay, hey, well, help us out. At this point, you guys have not seen the yellow team. So it's kind of I don't know. It just felt very weird. It felt very exclusive of we're not helping the girls. And it broke my heart because for once I felt like we finally got to see more of the girls, both girl teams, right? Yeah. And for them to finally, they've been in the back of the pack this whole time, and for them to finally have a leg up and for that to happen, again, gotta give Danny the flowers where he deserves them because it was so smart. He is thinking well beyond just what's the task at hand. Yep. But yeah, it was like kind of ick to like see like the girls be like, okay, well, we all help each other? And they were like, yeah,
They
no,
were
we
like,
gotta
no. And they
go.
kept, yeah, I just like,
Oh. See, if
I was trying
anything,
to do
I
it.
feel like if people could kind of get behind the alliance thing, they lost people with that interaction. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because it was like, yeah, you already are ahead of them, I guess.
yeah.
I don't know. But then again, so what? Then what? We're like, let's say, you know what? I'll play devil's advocate. Let's say he helps the girls. So what? Is Danny and Angie just going to navigate all 5 teams to the pit stop?
But then there's going to be a part of the fandom that's going to be pissed for Derek and Shalisa.
I'm
Can't
pissed
say
for
them
Derek and Shalisa. Like, I freaking loved them. I wanted to see more of them. And, like, again, I don't know what happened. Maybe they got lost and were hours behind, anyways. But it's just like, we'll never know what could have happened, how long it would have taken people to get the meat thing. And let's say it took them forever to get the meat thing, and then they chose to switch detours, and then we actually would have gotten to see who done it. Or again, if they weren't making decisions in like a herd like mentality, I would just love to know, like, in your own decision making, which one would you have chosen?
Yeah.
You know?
And it goes back to that rule that, again, I still think should be implemented. I understand this from the fans' perspective of once you get your clue, your race continues. Like you can't go back and help a team. Your race continues. And that's really what it should boil down to. And again, it was a very humbling episode for me as a super fan who's had the chance to watch and then live out his dream and now is back to being a viewer. I get the criticisms. I really, really do. But now I want fans to like lay off our season because we didn't do this. And that's what everyone
Yeah.
keeps saying we did, but we never raced as a herd ever.
Yeah.
It was never like, let's wait around for people. At least for mine and Will's standpoint, we never did that. Like we got answers or help, sure, but we're not going to wait on another team either. So
Yeah.
it was a very, again, very therapeutic episode. Because I get it from the viewer standpoint, but then I also got it from the racer standpoint.
Get it from, like, it's like you're there to survive, and it's like if you have people racing with you,
Yep.
especially if you have teams that you know for a fact are behind you, it's like, well, let's just get through this and get to the mat together. You know what I mean? And then we're all guaranteed moving on. So that's where, like, again, it'll be next episode. I'm curious to see if they divvy up the release times because of that.
Ooh, like individual or like the way they stack them.
I could see them doing first, second, and third get released together. To where Rod and Letitia would be with the first group, and then just Amber and Vinny and Danny and Angie would be in a group together, and then the girls after that. Or like, I don't know, I'm just curious how they're gonna do it. Or actually, so correct me if I'm wrong. So Rod and Letitia finished third, then Amber and Vinny, then Danny and Angie, correct?
Yes.
So what if they did, because now there's 8 teams left, if they did 4 and 4. And now Danny and Angie, the ones who crushed the navigation, are now the only one of that alliance leaving in the last, like, heat.
That's what I think is going to happen. I think that's what's going to bite Danny and Angie in the butt, sadly.
Yes. But again, that's where they can overcome on their own. But then it's like, okay, so if you catch up to Rod and Letitia and Amber and Vinny next time, are you going to help them on the tasks?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, at what point do you break it off? You know, are they going to wait and try and get to final 3 altogether? And then it's run your own race? Or it's like, but seriously, like, at what point? Yeah. Like, that's a hard thing to do. But like, I totally get it. Like, I loved Dusty and Ryan. I loved Kim and Penn, and I wanted to get to the end with them. But it's like, yeah, just like your season, we were never like really hand in hand the whole way through. Like, it's like, we definitely followed Kim and Penn at one time. Like, Penn was like a freaking godsend in Corsica and France. But it was understood, like, when Penn got to the knot thing and he finished it, he's like, see ya. You know, same thing with me in the comms of Portugal. Like, when I was on that comms, I was like, see ya. You know, it's when you get your clue, bye. If you guys are doing it all at the same time, then it kind of makes sense. But yeah, to hang around, again, I don't want to beat like a dead horse, but like, It's just, I mean, obviously everyone else is going to talk about it, so we can't not talk about it.
No, yeah. I mean, and
Like,
that's why I think I was excited to talk about it because, like I said, I stand corrected from the couch standpoint. I get it. I see it now firsthand, not being biased, because obviously that was our season and how the narrative went. But I get it. I really do. But I'm not going to fault the teams.
no.
Alliances, relationships have been weaved throughout this entire show, the entire series, going back to season. I've been rewatching the seasons, and the very first season, Joe and Bill, Frank and Margareta, and Rob and Brennan, from a very early episode, like 2 or 3, came together. They said, we're the top 3 teams to maintain our lead. Let's work together. Let's form an alliance. Eventually, they had mistrust and they was tension. They didn't really work together. They didn't really see eye to eye. The difference with our season, Will and I were able to make it long term. We formed the relation. That was our strong suit. We actually had relationships where people trusted us and underestimated us.
Yeah.
But with this situation too, I can't see this season with 3 teams constantly running the race together, especially for the preview next week. Danny's like, oh, it's time for us to run our own race. So I think Danny's going to wake up now and be like, people are now taking advantage.
Yeah, but again, it's like in the beginning, you're just not trying to get last. So it's like, again, at some point they will have to. You have to choose to separate yourself, you know.
Yep.
But like again, it was
the leg. Angie he's not behind on roadblock. So now
I will say each one of those 3 teams had like a highlighted moment, right? Like Amber crushed the car challenge. Rod crushed the bike challenge, and then Danny and Angie just did very well just from a navigation standpoint. And the last thing I'll circle back to, right, is like just what an awesome moment would it have been for Angie to kind of push through that on her own and get that puzzle and then like still keep racing. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I just felt like that like almost redemption moment and like, you know, kind of like victorious feeling. Like, I mean, Amber just kind of did it for her. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Anyways, I'm done.
And that's another rule that I think fans have a valid point on, is that if you're at a roadblock and your teammate can't help you, why is a participant in the roadblock with you allowed to help you?
Right.
My argument is that it's not your teammate, but still, that could be a rule that maybe they change moving forward. That like, if you're in the roadblock, it is a solo task. You can only complete it by yourself and you can't get help from others. Or the puzzle should be different. I don't know. I just like, it's been a very interesting season. I still think the teams are entertaining to some aspect where they're kind of carrying that part of the show for me. I loved the Mega Leg in a 90-minute episode.
I did too.
I will be curious to see moving forward what happens if these teams keep running together, if they break off, if there's going to be more tension now from the bottom with Sunny and Busy and Yvonne and Melissa.
I was going to say, that would be cool if Sunny and Busy and Yvonne and, is it Alyssa or Melissa?
Melissa.
Let's say these girls power up together and are like, you know what? Let's put our little foreheads together and try and beat this group of 6. You know, it could get like very like, yeah, almost like Big Brotherish, like alliance versus alliance, you know? Like, I don't hate it, but like, it's like how that works in the race, I don't really know. But yeah, I loved getting to see a little bit more of the girls. Again, I still want to see an all female team win. It's like not looking that way this season, honestly, just because they are kind of in the back of the pack, but like anything can happen, right? Like they did kind of push themselves to the front and Danny took that away from them, you know, as he should. Like, again, brilliant strategic move, like brilliant. Can't fault it. I have to just applaud it. But yeah, it was a good Mega Leg. This was a good Mega Leg. Lots to talk about.
Well, let's briefly go over each team and wrap this up. Cayla, Juan and Shane, we agree this was their cleanest leg. They did a great job.
Yes. Like,
I mean, navigation at the beginning, but they dominated nonetheless.
And like, again, this was very catered to them too, right? Like, he's like, as a pilot, we have to know, like, you know, just like with the whole race course stuff, and then Shane being like, oh, I speak Spanish, let's do the meet thing. It's like they have definitely found their groove, and I wouldn't be shocked if like it's kind of them against Ricky and Cesar, like constantly battling it out. Like I at this point in time, I don't know if I feel like any other team is going to give those 4 boys a run for their money.
Well, and on the flip side with Ricky and Cesar, I'm not going to lie, I love them as people, but I did like seeing them struggle a little bit this episode. I
did too.
Seeing that they have like the super cleanest leg. They definitely struggled at some of these tasks. I liked that Juan and Shane were able to bump them out of first because it helps with a little bit of this predictability, but it was nice to see them struggle a little bit.
Yeah. And again, but it also was nice to see them still come in the front of the pack while struggling, right? Like it just reiterates like what a strong racer, what strong racers they are. And again, nothing against them. It's just again, we're on the couch here. We're like living vicariously through them. Like I want to see some mishaps,
Yes. And they seem to look really well under pressure because of those mishaps.
Right.
Danny and Angie, we've talked about. I feel like they were kind of the stars of this episode. I don't know if I have anything else to say other than I hope Danny learns moving forward to cut the cord a little bit with helping and navigating and literally bringing teams along for the ride. Because I think Danny and Angie are fully capable. I think they just need to find that confidence.
Yes, I think they need to find that confidence because, like he said, if his mom could do those, get 2 roadblocks under her belt, they can run this race. Danny, I agree with you. I think y'all can as well, but I don't think you can if you're carrying the wrong teams. That's all I'm going to say about that. Yeah.
Rod and Leticia, I think that they're becoming a little too reliant on other teams. I mean, from this leg, they were relying way too heavily on Danny and Angie, and I'm wondering if they don't have that crutch, if they'll do well with the navigation moving forward, if they'll get tripped up more. But I mean, still think literally they're a top team.
I do think that they're a top team, but like I just think I don't want to say they've gotten lucky because I do think that they're a strong team. But again, like Leticia was struggling with the puzzle. She was. They both are struggling with navigation. They said it was highlighted many times. They were like, what road is this? Where are we? We don't know where we are. We're just following blindly. Like it's like one leg of doing that can really kind of screw it up. It's like every leg is your chance to practice and get more comfortable navigating A to B. Like it got easier as the season went. So it's like, again, do I think they're a very strong physical team? Yes. But if the wrong person does the wrong detour or they pick the wrong, it's just like, yeah, I'm very curious just to see where this goes, especially if they don't have Danny to follow next leg.
Agreed. And I feel like Amber and Vinny are still a top team as well. I think that they need to learn to, and I think they do, because I loved how Vinny again said, we are 100% running our race. We're running our race. It's a good strategy, but it's not always the right strategy. So it seems like he's got the right perspective on when to and when not to. But it looks like next episode, they're kind of resorting back to their early race ways of the bickering. I feel like they didn't really as much this leg. But
I thought they were great this leg. He was like super encouraging. Amber freaking crushed it.
Like they were
but again, it's like I feel like they could have placed higher and actually been even more ahead of the pack, like given they just like relied on themselves. Again, I still think they're a very strong team, but yeah.
Sunny and Busy, the queens of the just crushing
detours
tasks
and roadblocks. Yeah.
Like they fall behind and they recognize it, but they make up that time by completely dominating the tasks. And I feel like that will help them if these alliance packs don't keep, icing the bottom teams out like that. But
not icing them out.
I think Sunny and Busy can be a great team. I mean, I they got 7th this leg, but Yvonne and Melissa got 6th. But either way, these all-female teams clearly are capable. They're doing really great at tasks. I do think Yvonne and Melissa may be just overall more smooth with their racing than like Sunny and Busy, because they don't seem to really trip up with navigation as much.
I agree with that statement.
But I'm worried that Sunny and Busy, that could be their only downfall, is being navigationally challenged.
I agree. So I'm curious to see how many more like self-drive situations we're going to have. Because if that gets taken away, if they can keep up crushing these detours and roadblocks, they could move up very easily. They almost did this leg.
And then with Derek and Shalisa, again, we'll never know what could have been or what necessarily happened, but I'm sad to see them go. I loved their bickering, especially at the detour when like he finished and Shalisa was like, "This is all you had to do?"
I know.
I was like, "Oh shoot, not you throwing shade at your husband," but it was so playful and endearing. I'm like, again, it's just like, this reminds me of my dynamic with Will. Like he probably would have said something similar.
Yeah, I could totally see Will being like, "Babe, really? Like 6 pieces." But I enjoyed them so much this season. Like it's hard. I feel this way after every team has left this season so far. Like I just haven't wanted to see any of them go. I'm sad we couldn't get them on this podcast, but I'm wearing yellow for them. I appreciated feeling like I got to know them through the TV. I think she represented cancer survivors, retirees, like all like it's like I think they represented very, very well. And like, but again, I could just tell the whole vibe every time they were shown, the few times they were. There was no urgency. I feel like they kind of knew their fate. Their fate was like, yeah, just kind of, it seemed sealed in the beginning, which was unfortunate. And we'll never know what could have possibly happened. But
watch, we'll find out later on that they were like hours lost, hours behind, and then we'd be like, well, then this little pack alliance didn't really matter because
it didn't even matter. Exactly.
That's not why Derek and Shalisa got eliminated. It was on their own accord.
It was on their own, yeah. So, but again,
fun episode.
It was a good one. I'm excited for the next one. And again, no hate to any of the teams. I'm gonna like speak on behalf of them. Obviously, everyone's gonna have their own opinion. Like all James and I could really talk to is like our experience, and as a racer and as a viewer, we can see both sides. People can choose to like it or not, but like this is the race that y'all are running, and like it is smart. We don't have to like it. It's smart. So good job. Good job.
Well, can't wait to see how the rest of this season plays out. I can't believe we're halfway. And Cayla, always great seeing your face. I miss you.
I miss you more. Enjoy the Cook Island.
Oh, thank you. We'll be back next week, and I'll see if we can get some guests on to join us as well. But it was just nice to chit chat with you, Cayla.
Wonder who the next team's gonna be.
I know. Enjoy your week, everyone.
Yes, enjoy your week. See you later.
Bye.